everyone, it's Raina. So this video is looking at the numerology of 2023. This will be a 7 universal year. There's also your personal year, and that is found by adding up your um, month and day. I always get confused, date or day. Month and day of birth plus the current year. So if you are somebody, let's say you're born on January 1st, doesn't matter the year, you're just adding up the month and day. So that's 1 plus 1 equals 2, and then this is a 7 universal year, so that's going to be a 9 for you. So somebody like that is having a very mystical year. There might be some things that are tying up. They're tying up certain things. But anyway, I'm not going to get into the combinations of the personal year and the universal year. I'm just going to be talking about the 7 and what it represents. So the number 7 is connected to Neptune, and it is supposed to be spiritual. I'm assuming that's why. And so there's a contemplative aspect to this number, and it can be about solitude. It can be about it's interesting because it can be your spiritual, maybe your spiritual studies, but it can also be the things that you do to pursue academic pursuits, or they say here intellectual, but I would say even all of that. And it's really weird because this number is also associated with science and technology. And that always kind of bothered me because I thought, well, what does that have to do with the spiritual? That's like kind of the left brain kind of stuff, but it is what it is. And by the way, I want to give a thanks out to Anthony Lewis for his book Tarot Plain and Simple, because even trying to find online information about this year or even about the number 7 proved very difficult for me, that in terms of like satisfying me. And I knew I have this book, so I knew that I could go and look it up. And he included it in his tarot book because obviously the tarot cards have numbers attached to them, and that is an additional part of what the card represents. And speaking of the tarot, the 2 major arcana cards that are connected to the number 7 are the Chariot, which is actually numbered 7, and the Tower card, which is 16, but it adds up to 7, or reduces to 7. So I think that this is going to be a year when a lot of people are going within. And I feel like they're going within because of the spiritual upgrade that's occurring in the collective with all the things that are happening. Because when I was reading, the author mentioned about the Tower card, I'm like, whoa, wait a second. And then I'm like, oh yeah, duh, it's number 16. Because I do think we're going to have these Tower moments in 2023 where certain bombshells are revealed that threaten to create a lot of chaos. But because we're in this Neptunian vibe, we might be much more introspective and less likely to just kind of lash out. And really, it's not even about doing this consciously. If we are affected by the vibration of the number 7, this is just going to be how we choose to operate without even consciously knowing that we're doing it. But it's like doing your own research. I think research, I haven't seen the word research. Oh yeah, I see it now. And they even have the word analysis. They have all these key words. And the thing about research is it's something that you're doing by yourself. If you allow yourself to just listen to other people and you're not actually actively pursuing your own knowledge, then that's like a totally different situation. but we research things and then we analyze them, not only for their, um, value in our life, but also for what we can understand by connecting the dots and seeing how it all adds up in the bigger picture of things. Um, Now they said something. He mentions pondering choices. I would say I thought I saw something where they said like a turning point, and that I would agree with. And I don't know if the Chariot is connected to that. The Chariot is actually a card of victory. And to me, it's almost like a person makes the decision that they're going to pursue something. And even if they're met by opposing forces, which are, in all the decks I have, they'll have like the horses of duality, the black and white horses, or some other animals to represent these wild influences that threaten to keep the person, take the person off course. They pursue that anyway, and that's how they succeed. And so this can be a year where fate is part of the equation. Um, they even use the phrase divine order. And a word that I find curious is rebellion. Because to me, Neptune is, putting people under spells. And so for them to be able to rebel seems a little bit confusing because they may be operating under an illusion. But they talk about waiting patiently for something. And, I already feel that vibe. I'm sure a lot of people do for various reasons, where we know that there's something that needs to be revealed or experienced before we can just kind of move on. We've been in this almost, as I record this, at the end of 2022, this almost 3-year holding period. And even though we've, people, I'm sure they've started businesses, they've given birth, they've done all these new things, on a higher level, it still feels like we're in suspension. Kind of like the Hangman, I would say, which is another card associated with Neptune. But this idea of choice, like we have a choice, and we have to employ our wisdom. So if this sounds a little bit confusing, then that's perfect because that's what Neptune represents. And every month has its own, there's like a personal month vibration where you add up the number of the month plus the universal year. Like for instance, January is an 8, which is actually a card that's associated with, a lot of power, worldly power. So we start off on the right foot with that. But in terms of the bigger picture, if there are things that come out that are revealed that kind of shatter our illusions, so to speak, it really can allow people to spiritually advance because we begin to realize that we can't put trust in outer things. We can only trust ourselves. There are so many people where they have it backwards. They only trust the people they see as experts or authority figures, and they doubt themselves. And it shouldn't be that way. So I think I mentioned this at the beginning that one of the numbers, one of the words for the number 7 is solitude. And Of course, in the last couple of years, people have been forced to have more solitude. But this is a different situation. It's like when someone goes to a retreat, um, they're choosing that. They're not just like, oh, I have no friends, I'm lonely, and that's why I'm at this retreat. No, they're like, even if they are really a popular person, they need that time alone. And that introspection allows us to kind of analyze our life choices so that we can determine what course of action to take in the future. And it implies that there's something like this is kind of that in between phase before we start to really get going again. So, as a whole, this year represents that. This is a great year for studying, for meditating. I mean, of course, it's always a good time for those things, but whenever there's either an astrological transit, something with the numerology, it's aligning us with those activities to a higher degree. So it makes them, they will most likely be more powerful. You can really develop that practice. If you feel called to, solitude can also be part of this. And it doesn't mean that you have to lock yourself away. You can go to a park or you can go into the woods and be outside. It doesn't mean you have to hole yourself in your house or apartment or wherever. Um, yeah, this is great for artists. And, they mention how the numbers 5 and 7 disrupt the number 6, which is ruled by Venus and therefore is about that sense of harmony and peace. And like I said, the other card that's connected to this number 7 is the Tower. And the Tower is that this disruption, this disruptor, because things were building and it was like, it's kind of like when a volcano erupts, that you have to allow things to just, when they say that let the chips fall where they may kind of thing. I like some of these phrases that they talk about in his book. The death of an illusion. And again, Neptune as the number 7 caters to illusion. But the death of an illusion. And another word that they used was, well, they talk about havoc, but the word a jolting insight, awakening, release from bondage, breaking free. Yes, and this is definitely what a lot of us believe is going to happen. Now, it's coming out in dribs and drabs. So with the number 7, if the tower moment does occur in 2023, I believe that people, rather than, in order to process it, they're going to go within. And this is, or let me put it this way, that would be the best thing that somebody could do. Because sometimes people just want to react, and that can just lead to more chaos. So being able to like kind of go within and say, okay, what does the universe want me to know about this situation? And this can even be in your own personal life too, not just in the collective. But that's why these occult practices, or we could say metaphysical practices, can be of such great assistance because they can cultivate what is known as equanimity, which means that you're not blown by every wind. So that when we have these rocky outer experiences, we can still find that inner sanctum of peace. which is so important. So, yeah, I think that's all I wanted to say about that. But it should be very interesting to see what transpires. And I wish you well. Have a happy new year. Take care. Bye.